Yeah, so the phenomenon of reshoring has been taking place gradually over the last decade, driven by a lot of factors. I mean, what used to make sense back in the 80s and 90s just doesn't make as much sense, mostly for smaller, mid-sized, what I'd call instrumentation companies. The reshoring that I'm familiar with takes place in the electronics industry, and the labor rates in companies, for example, China, have risen dramatically. The data I have just shows loaded labor rates since 2009. They've grown 70% in Asia over that period of time, whereas in the U.S. they've run around 4%. So much more of a convergence on the labor. And the other factors like material costs, are about on par. It used to be 15, 20 years ago. The material advantage in Asia was much more profound, but now with the internet and companies in Asia really needing more and more market share, there's much more leveling of the playing field when it comes to raw materials, which makes up the bulk of the cost in electronic assembly, particularly complex electronic assemblies. So other factors like cost of capital have now leveled out. That capital is not as readily available in China as it used to be, whereas it is fairly available in the U.S. at this point. So. And then the last factor would be automation, significant improvements in automation for electronic assembly over the last decade. So in any given electronic assembly or product, there's less and less and less labor. And historically, that's been the advantage, the comparative advantage in Asia. So with that shrinking, the advantages aren't as high. Now, tax issues, other issues for a multinational company, those are still a consideration. But for a mid-sized U.S. company with revenues of under 200 million, which is the predominance of companies in the U.S., and I think globally too, reshoring either back to the U.S. or regionalization back to their countries where they do business, it makes a lot more sense.